Now, it's a big weekend for the ANC as the party discusses its policies ahead of its national elective conference that's taking place in December. One of the main issues of contention is the party's step-aside rule. The Limpopo and KZN provinces want the rule scrapped. This weekend's meeting comes at a very trying time in the country. The economy continues to stagger and unemployment rages on. We're joined now by Moloko Moloto, who joins us covering some of the important issues that the policy document looks at. Moloko, very good afternoon, rather, to you. And, you know, I don't know if you got to listen to the President's speech, but it did touch on a lot of the issues that they need to be focusing on this weekend in their plenary sessions to fix the economy. And, of course, a big one is corruption within the national party, within the national ruling party, as well as government. What other big points are you picking up?
Good afternoon, Zofua. Indeed, the president of the ANC, when he opened this particular conference, it appears that he really acknowledges that the ANC is at the crossroads, saying that or reminding the ANC delegates that they actually have lost electoral support, and if they don't change their trajectory, the voters are likely to punish them come 2024. And that is what they acknowledge, even in their own documents, to say there's a high possibility that the ANC can actually go below 50% in 2024. He obviously is lamenting the state of affairs in our country, the rising food prices, for instance, saying that many of those factors affecting that really have nothing to do with us as a country. They are issues that are taking place at the international level. But of course, South Africans would want to know what the ANC is doing to combat corruption, because they are in government. South Africans who do not have access to water will want to know what the governing party, in particular in municipalities, is going to do to ensure that they get money. The issue of step aside, we had the president really trying to say that as the ANC, they should not compromise on the resolutions that they took in their 54th conference that are aimed at combating corruption. But let's speak to one of the delegates. He is the spokesperson for the ANC in the province, Jimmy Machaka. Your province is one of the provinces that have decided that the controversial step-aside rule must be scrapped coming into this conference. Do you still stand by that, having had the president lamenting the extent of corruption, saying that if you don't deal with corruption, South African voters may not forgive you?
Of course, we align ourselves with the law by the president that corruption is one of the factors that has affected who can reverse the work of the African National Congress. However, we still maintain that a reversal of the corruption cannot be cured by a step-aside alone. There are multiple factors that are involved here. Despite what the president has said, the ANC Limpopo still reaffirm its views that, look, do away with the corruption. We are in agreement. Do away with a step-aside, because it may not yield the social ills that we are facing in South Africa. What becomes key? Voters will have confidence of the African National Congress if we deliver basic services. And we are in support of all government institutions that are hard at work to fight corruption. Our message is that, you know, the fact that we are calling for a step-aside rule to be dealt away with does not suggest that representatives of the ANC in all sectors of the society, they must steal from the public. Law enforcement agencies must do their work. They must make sure that whoever that is found in the wrong side of the law must be brought to book.
Yeah, the president has spoken about a whole lot of things, and many of those really of the things he said are not new. What really, from your point of view, was inspiring about the long speech by the president? I mean, I can talk about education. He's saying that these delegates must diagnose reasons why, for instance, children who are starting school at an early age, many of them don't even get to finish their matric. I mean, government has to know those things. What really should people who were listening to the president at home draw inspiration from what he said?
Look, let's indicate that one of the things that for the first time the ANC will be confronted to deal with is that we have a conference resolution that says that we must expropriate land without compensation. However, the ANC has not been able to succeed in amending the Section 25 provision of the Constitution. But for the first time, the ANC must then engage. What then happens next? This is the question that was posed to conference by the President. The ANC must then be able to say, despite the fact that we have not been able to succeed in changing a Section 25 provision, the ANC government should go and test expropriation of land without compensation in its current form, because the law does allow that. So we're looking forward that this conference will give that particular guidance. Secondly, the President has emphasized that the ANC should begin to be led by young people. The ANC is young because the current population of South Africa, the majority are the young people, and therefore the more we have young people leading the ANC, will also be giving them hope and confidence that the ANC trust them, that they can even give them whatever form of responsibility. And lastly, he has spoken very sharply about the empowerment of women. If you check the current economic setup of the country, women and young people continues to be outside. The economy remains controlled by the few in the society. And the President is correct to say, look, it's high time that we need to empower our women, not because they are women in gender, but simply because they are a very important component in the society.
Yeah, and when it comes to this issue of women empowerment, just exactly how are you going to do it? Because as much as you can argue that you will do the 50-50 balance, even with women that you send, or representatives that you send to parliament and the legislatures, but those people don't have power. Unlike the officials since top 6 of the ANC, we saw you as the ANC celebrating the fact that in the history of the party, you were having a woman as a deputy chairperson in KwaZulu-Natal. I mean, a lot of people will be shocked that you still don't even have a provincial chairperson as a woman. And oftentimes when you elect women as officials, they become deputies. That on its own, how are you going to make sure that you elect them? Do your delegates understand this message that indeed you can have a woman as president?
Look, firstly, if you diagnose from what the President has indicated is that women must be empowered, not only in terms of gender balance within our structural setup, but also in terms of their inclusiveness in the economic setup of the country. By the way, ourselves in Limpopo, even before the President could make this type of pronouncement, we have already demonstrated to the people of Limpopo and South Africa as a whole that we do have trust in women, that they do have capacity. All they need is just to be given the responsibility to prove themselves. Currently, as I speak with you, in Limpopo, the provincial officials is having 2 women that are part of the top 5, which is something that you will likely find in other provinces. So the empowerment of women must go beyond within the party, even within the state. Your supply chain and procurement processes, a particular percentage actually ought to be allocated for the empowerment of women of South Africa, and it's something that must come very strong from this policy conference.
Yeah, finally, let's talk about the lifestyle audit proposal. The President said this in 2018 during his first state of the national address. Maybe what has happened up to so far, perhaps, if I were to confine it to you as Limpopo, have you made any move in terms of ensuring that you know the type of lives that your employees in municipalities and in government are living?
Look, of course, this was one of the resolutions that was taken by the African National Congress in a quest to have corruption, in a quest to have leaders living beyond their means, in making sure that leadership is able to account for their wealth. We might not have made tremendous progress, however, that resolution remains key. All that maybe this policy conference ought to do is to find a way to accelerate its practical implementation in the ANC and in the general society.
All right, quickly, why should South Africans continue to believe in the ANC when for so many years since it took over power, things seem to have degenerated? We're talking of jobs that are not there. We're talking of rampant corruption and crime.
Look, the South Africans should never lose hope on the African National Congress, and they should continue to put their vote next to the mark of the African National Congress. We have made a significant progress post-democracy, but despite this progress that we have made, we still believe that a lot still ought to be done. But when you compare our shortcomings against our achievement, clearly there is a need for the South African to continue to entrust the responsibility to govern South Africa to the African National Congress, because any other party that they may take their vote to is unlikely to have made this achievement within this short space of time.
All right, Jimmy Machaka, he speaks for the ANC in the Limpopo province. So the reality of the matter is that as South Africa finds itself at this point in time, its future is entirely or largely dependent on these delegates who are gathered here. And considering the fact that among themselves as leaders or delegates of the ANC, they just don't get along. That is why they are even talking about the importance of unity and renewal. And for them to then be at the forefront, really taking a lead in terms of taking our nation forward, it's going to be dependent largely on whether they get along or not. I think I am now going to be joined by the new chairperson of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. Sir, thank you so much for making time. The SKZN ANC, what are the takeaways from the opening speech by the party president?
I think so far he has represented the ANC. There were some things that he has already highlighted, the issue of economic transformation. He also landed on the statement of what must be done. I think the plenary or the delegates will respond on the issue of economic outlook, on the issue of land. This the things has been done as per the resolution of the government. Needs to do more in creating the stability. Needs to do more on the issue of the state bank. We need to be critical on what has been delaying the government of the ANC. So those are the issues that we can look at. We also spoke about the issue of gender-based violence, which is critical, which must be addressed, and we are able to do that.
Talk about organizational renewal is one of the issues that we will be discussing as delegates in some of the conditions. You are clear already on stage and scrap the step-aside rule. Are you not concerned that perception out there might be that you want to protect people who are in trouble with the law?
We are critical in terms of our stable position. We are against corruption as revolutionaries. And we know that corruption is inherent with capitalism as the system. But we are making sure that at the same time, don't contradict the constitution of the country. Don't contradict the constitution of the ANC, because the constitution of the ANC has a nice benchmark, is clear of what must be done of someone who has committed an error in the organization or is not behaved correctly. So we are dealing with those matters.
The president was clear that as the ANC you must not abandon some of the resolutions in as far as the fight to combat corruption is concerned, resolutions you took at your previous national conference. My understanding is that he supports the continuation of the step-aside. I'm therefore wondering that you will possibly be here as ANC delegates in December. Do I understand you perhaps to say that you will not support any person who continues to support the step-aside rule come December?
I don't think the issue of step-aside rule is attached to a human being or to a comrade. It is a principal matter. In the policy conference is where we debate. It's the highest political school of the ANC. It is where we debate matters and check the balance of forces, the material condition. So please don't juxtapose it with the issue of the election. We're in the policy conference, December will come, and where we'll check the capable leader who must lead the ANC. And we'll check on the epoch as to who is the relevant person to take us way forward as the organization.
Lastly, one of the things that I hear often is the blame that is now put on people who apparently infiltrated the ANC, and their life is just completely inimical with the principles and the values of the ANC. And that sounds more like the ANC seems to be blaming members instead of blaming its own policies in terms of changing the lives of South Africans, in terms of fighting corruption.
Unlike China, you know, when they use meritocracy, they will identify you, they will prune the process. The ANC is the broader church, so you are bound to attract a lot of elements in the organization. But as the leader of the society, we ought to make sure that the leader of the ANC, at the end of the day, in terms of the branch, in terms of the region, up to national, must be someone who's accustomed to what is needed in the communities. Amongst the resolution taken, please amend all those things. So I think we agree on that one, that we are at the back on the issue of service delivery. The President spoke about the DDM model, which must fast-track the process of service delivery. Other people are complaining already that not a lot has been done in terms of governance, in terms of local government. That is why we have even lost some of the municipalities. So that ought to change. Let us hit the ground running. Let us build stronger branches. So that's where the efficient agent of change will be found.
So the ANC ever be united?
Yes, it will be united. But ANC is not a monolithic organization. There will be some contradictions, but it will be united at some point.
Mr. Duma, the newly elected chairperson of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, clearly not willing to divulge whether they will support President Cyril Ramaphosa, considering that he definitely supports the step-aside rule and they don't. Obviously, as I said, these people are going to determine the future of South Africa, and of course in 2024 they've already admitted that should things stay the same as they are, they definitely are likely to get below 50% of the electoral vote.
That newly elected chairperson, Moloko, saying something very interesting in your crossing. He said, when you were speaking about issues around corruption, that corruption is linked with capitalism. What do you think it is that he was trying to say? I found that rather amusing because he's now absolving the ANC in some or other way from everything that they've been implicated in by saying that corruption and fraud, that's linked with capitalism. It's got nothing to do with the communist movement of the ANC. I mean, what did you make of those thoughts?
Well, Rofiwa, I can only speculate here. You might have heard the General Secretary of the SACP, Solima Paida. In fact, even before he made his opening remarks at this policy conference today, saying that the policies of the ANC that are going to be crafted in this meeting must not be influenced by the interests of business. How that really is going to be possible, I guess your guess is as good as mine, because our country is not a socialist country. Even countries such as China, it is not entirely a socialist country. It's got a mixed economy. Now, the role of business obviously is central in our country. Now, blaming capitalism, I guess what he's trying to say is that perhaps big business is to blame to a large extent in as far as the problems of the ANC, issues of corruption are concerned. But reality of the matter is that, Rofiwa, the ANC has deployed people, mayors, cabinet ministers, and other people who are deployed in line with their deployment committees and all that. So all those people represent the ANC, and they have influence one way or the other.
That's absolutely correct, Moloko, and it would be very inappropriate for the ANC to remove itself entirely from the corruption narrative that we have been speaking about. The president actually speaks about it, Moloko. Municipalities, he zoned in on them. He made an example of the fact that in 2017, about 8 municipalities, if I'm not mistaken, were found to be put in under administration. Fast forward to February 22 this year, there are now 33 municipalities across the country, Moloko, that have been placed under administration. It's a shocking number. And the president was very clear in his speech to say, we, as the ANC, are to blame for the unskilled management within the municipalities, the malfeasance, the fraud and the corruption, and acknowledging that a lot of the managers and the officials have their hands in many bits of the pots of money within municipalities. And he did say that Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, minister that is, should be taking responsibility, as her ministry is the one that oversees municipalities. I mean, what are your thoughts here?
Well, Rofiwa, you would remember, and our viewers would also recall as well, that there's about 177 municipalities that are in financial distress in our country. But also, the National Treasury has identified about 43 of them that are in an even worse position. They say they are in a financial and service delivery crisis. So that is the phrase. So many of those are governed by the ANC. So it is the ANC that has collapsed those municipalities. It was never heard of before, Rofiwa, wherein people who work for government or who work for state-owned entities or for municipalities, for that matter, would worry about that they may never get paid their salaries. Today, as we speak, there are municipalities that are battling to pay salaries of their employees. And there are many factors, of course. Others are simply unable to collect rates and revenue, but others are simply mismanaging.
We're going to go to a press briefing that is currently underway. We'll come back and we'll catch up with you and continue that conversation.